that strikes me as someone like reading something like, oh yeah, right at the end they were issuing paper suits to dudes because they were out of wool or whatever.
Yeah, but it does a great job of emphasizing like the dire straits they're in at that moment.
Yeah,
like even if that wasn't historically accurate,
it's really funny. Super funny.
Like it does a great job of that. Hey, Toddo.
What's going on?
We got a podcast, The Buff and the Blazer. If I was a listener, where would I go to find more?
You can check us out on our website, thebuffandtheblazer.com. Drew over there writes a article that goes along with every single episode.
You can find all kinds of little extras on the articles, and you can listen to the podcast right there. Also, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, we're on Twitter at Buff and Blazer. Follow us there.
Get those clicks, people.
The Buff and the Blazer.
Welcome to the Buff and the Blazer podcast, episode 10. I'm Drew. I'm here with El Toddo as usual.
What's up?
And today we're going to dive into JoJo Rabbit, directed by Taika Waititi. El Toddo, what did you think overall impressions walking out of the theater on this one?
Well, I didn't see it in the theater. I bought it on my old TV there, and I watched it here at my house, which was kind of nice. Quite a bit more comfortable and no outside distractions.
Cool.
Which I feel like this movie was so sharp that you kind of needed to be fully immersed and fully in, and the subject matter was so heavy that I actually really enjoyed seeing it home. But coming out of the movie, I was like really blown away. It's extremely thought-provoking, and yeah, I was at the end just trying to find any fault that I could. Since we are reviewing it,
Good luck.
I'm having some trouble,
Good
to
luck.
be honest.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I phrased it in terms of your thoughts coming out of the theaters, because I saw this maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was lucky enough to get into a screening where we were able to watch the film, and then at the very end, they had Taika Waititi come out, and he did like a quick Q&A, and we were able to kind of hear a little bit about how he made it and his thoughts behind some of the decisions. But I remember it's a film that was really interesting after seeing the trailers. Like, I remember watching the trailers and going like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be laughing at some of this content, because it is really weird before you actually understand what's going on. But after the film finished and they introduced Taika and he came out on stage, the whole room stood up. Just a complete standing ovation. And I can't remember a film off the top of my head that affected me as much as this film did, in terms of how well done it was, but also how deep the message was of the film and the subjects it was tackling. It was a really, really masterful balance of getting a complete screwball comedy while also maintaining a very, very serious message and being of substance in terms of what they were trying to say, weaving in the story that takes place during World War II, you know, with the backdrop of all these horrible things associated with the Nazis in the 40s. But yeah, the way it was done, I mean, I haven't seen a film of this caliber in a while, and I was blown away after coming out of it.
Yeah, I echo that, and it's an extremely impressive execution of tackling an insanely heavy topic, like
Right.
essentially the heaviest topic of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And to do it with so much fun comedy involved,
Yeah.
yet at the same time show the dark side of all of this, it was extremely well done.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away at the subject matter, how to take that subject matter and be so on point.
Yeah.
You know, just hit every little note perfectly.
Yeah.
Using comedy. It's like the ultimate satire of this movie. Like using comedy to point out the horribleness.
Absolutely.
Of that whole event.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely impressive job.
So yeah, Taika spoke a little bit about this during his Q&A, but he said when he went in to pitch the idea for the movie to the studio, he told them right off the bat, he's like, I'm going to give you the script and you guys need to read it because there's no way I can pitch this and do it justice. You just won't understand. You have to read the material. And I feel like that's how I feel about the movie overall. Like, I can't really explain what this movie is about. It's something you just have to take a deep dive into and go watch it. Because once you're done, you'll understand the tone. You'll understand what they were going for. It's something completely unique that I've never seen before.
Yeah, they're speaking to, you know, the most basic human morality, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot. That's like the overall message.
Right.
And we can speak a bit more freely about this movie because it's been out for quite a while.
Yeah.
So spoilers, people, because we're gonna have to get through this one. But yeah, to take the subject matter of you're inside essentially Berlin. It's pretty sure it's Berlin,
Yeah.
right? You know, in the later stages of the war, when the Russians and the Americans are pushing in from opposite directions. I thought it did like a really very humanistic job of showing some of the elements that were like probably going around inside what was going down in Germany at that point.
Right.
Like the blatant denial that they were losing.
Yeah.
The war, you know, like the roundup of metal for Hitler and like all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
they took this they used comedy in a way to show some really dark aspects of that war.
Right.
And it almost makes you, you know, sympathetic to the people that were living in Germany with those, you know, maybe similar feelings to like Scarlett Johansson's character.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
And like the toll it's taking on their society
in
terms of like the propaganda, and it's just really deep, man. Like really, really deep.
Yeah.
But super funny. But insanely funny.
Right.
Like it's masterful. That's why that is a masterful execution of as heavy a topic as you can tackle.
Right. Well, so before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about it, and you said that you weren't sure, like, the kind of tone or the kind of light they were painting the Nazis in with this film. Like, you're kind of unsure about it a little bit.
Not really the Nazis, the German people.
The German. Okay.
That were probably in a position where it was way too dangerous.
Yeah.
To have your moral compass shine bright. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
In like late stage collapsing a fascist state, like
yeah,
it's really hard to wage judgment upon people whose every family situation is different.
Sure.
You know, in a country that's gotten completely out of hand crazy. So I felt like it showed the ridiculous side of the whole Nazi mythology really well. And really funny. Like the scenes when they're all saying Heil Hitler to each other, like that's their greeting, and it keeps going around. And
with the inspectors coming over to his house.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like 6 different people doing it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's just like a movie like Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Really heavy, really, you know, dark and we shall not forget kind of movie.
Yeah.
This is like a different kind of way of tackling the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's weaving it with love and comedy and triumph in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's just all over the map in terms of construction of a story.
Yeah. And so one of the interesting things Taika said during his Q&A that really made me understand why the film is the way it is he said that there are a lot of great World War II movies out there, and there are a lot of great films that tackle the subject matter. Schindler's List being one of them. He said that what makes his film different from those is that it's told from the perspective of a 10-year-old growing up in Berlin.
Yeah.
So everything you see through JoJo's eyes is bigger and more fantastic and overemphasized and completely heightened compared to something more grounded from an adult's perspective.
Yeah.
Which
It's
is
like
why
a
you
full
can
caricature of
exactly.
Nazis.
So that's JoJo's interpretation, his 10-year-old interpretation of Nazism in Germany, which I thought was brilliant. Like only someone like Taika Waititi could come up with an idea like that. And it's based off a book too. It's based off a novel
Okay.
by Christine Lunan, and the book's called Caging Skies.
Okay.
And it's pretty well known now because he's given shout outs to his mom during all his award speeches, but his mom introduced him to the book Caging Skies, and he read it, and he was immediately inspired to write something.
Is it as funny as the book meant to be funny?
I doubt it.
Or is it meant to shine light on the fact that, you know, these kids that grew up in the Nazi youth, you can't hold it against them
Yeah.
because that's what the environment they were raised in. And that's like a pretty heavy
Yeah, totally.
topic, you know, and especially in a world where everybody wants to battle, they're the bad ones, we're the good ones. Like,
Right.
It's really like a super empathetic look at all the little German boys that were going through that Hitler Youth thing.
Sure, yeah.
And taking such a goofy angle of the imaginary friend, it really highlights how impressionable kids are
Yeah.
at that age and how quickly out of hand an ideology of a country and a whole nationalist thing can explode, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's crazy, but it speaks a lot to...
Yeah, it's a little scary.
Yeah,
It's a little
like
bit
to
scary,
modern...
you know?
Exactly. So, I mean, the film's timely in that sense. Yeah, I don't know if the book is as funny. I mean, I'm sure a lot of that is just Taika doing what Taika does. But he was definitely inspired by the novel. And he won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. So,
Okay.
The writing of this...
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's totally deserved. I didn't think there was
The
anyone...
dopest name in Hollywood, too.
Yeah. But the writing in here was like so sharp across the board with like the little one-liners and the jokes. But I think going back to what you said with having JoJo being the lens to how we see these events going on, I feel like you're able to really get deeper into the idea of Nazi like ideology and nationalism in a way that you almost couldn't do with an adult. Because adults, I guess, they seem like they're maybe a little more blatantly, I guess, expressive with how they feel on screen, the way they portray characters like that are bought into the Nazi ideology, where with a kid you can really overemphasize like just how impressionable, yeah, thank you, that an ideology can be on someone. And I think the only real effective way you can get that sense is by using a 10-year-old, someone of that age, to see, you know, that element of it. And like from the very beginning, he walks out of his house, he's in the mirror checking out his uniform, making sure, like, you know, it's all proper and pressed and everything. And then he has his imaginary Adolf right there giving him a pump up before he walks out the door. And then he's just howling left and right. He's so proud to be a little Nazi.
Yeah, it really speaks tightly to the power of propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how you take something as hateful as that whole regime in terms of the ideology, and then you put it, you know, wrap it up in this little kid's mind.
Yeah.
And it almost makes us like, holy shit, like that's so easy to like breed an army.
Yeah.
You know, like I felt like that angle of the movie, you know, you hear all throughout you study history and military history in particular, you know, when they would take slaves and take slave soldiers from, you know, a conquered country, whatever, it doesn't matter what empire we're talking about, they would always grab these young boys and then you just immerse them in this propaganda. And I thought it shined a light on that aspect so heavily, because it's almost like joyful to watch how stoked he is in all this really hateful stuff, and it really just flips everything on its head.
Yeah, and I think what the most striking thing about the film too is that he really does a good job of showing just how ridiculous those ideas are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's all the stuff that people were buying into. And I'm sure there were generations of a whole generation of kids and adults that bought into that the way JoJo does in the movie.
Yeah. There's a shitload of them still.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, the line I think that sums up, I guess, what the movie's getting at is when you have the inspector, Captain Diertz, played by Stephen Merchant, and he comes into JoJo's house, and he's stoked that JoJo has all this propaganda, like, plastered up on his wall, and how, pro-Nazi he is, and he says something to the extent of, "I wish everyone had your blind fanaticism."
Yeah.
Like, that is the punchline of the film.
Totally.
Like, unfortunately, it's something that's relevant today, I think.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the dangers of blindly following some kind of ideology.
Loyalty, they
Yeah.
play up the loyalty. There's, the scene with Taika near the end where he's demanding loyalty.
Yeah.
That shit hit. That shit hit home really hard.
Come on, little man, you want to give me a high?
Yeah.
A little high for
Yeah.
old time's sake.
But what did you think of like the whole story of the movie? Because it tells all of these really large themes.
Yeah.
It speaks to these really deeper narratives. But what did you think of like the construction of the actual story?
Yeah, so for me, that's what made the film so enjoyable to watch is you have JoJo, who starts off as this absolute crazy little Nazi kid, and he's totally into the ideology. And then I think of it as a cross between Schindler's List, Anne Frank, and Nacho Libre in one, in terms of the comedy, with all
That's
this,
interesting.
with all the serious elements. What I loved was how you really bought JoJo's turn throughout the film. So he starts off as this fanatical Hitler youth, and then as he discovers that his mom is harboring a Jewish girl in their house, and he finds out and he's pissed. He can't believe it. The character Elsa, portrayed by Thomasin McKenzie.
Fantastic job.
Yeah, everyone in the film did great.
We'll go through characters in a
but
bit.
then they develop this relationship, and JoJo slowly starts to realize that she's just like me. She's a human person just like me. We have like very similar fears, very similar aspirations. We're very much the same. And then to see his turn and her effect on him, where you get to the final moment of the film where they're together and they're finally able to celebrate because the Nazis have essentially been taken down. I liked how that developed over the series of events, and it took its time to breathe, and I bought into that. I bought into that wholeheartedly. It wasn't rushed at all, and I loved that his mom, played by Scarlett Johansson, Rosie, I liked how she was kind of the linchpin to getting that turn going for JoJo. And it's such a tragic end for her character. But the way that they were able to write that story, which is, I guess, a story that you hear a lot about of. I mean, Anne Frank, that's probably the most notable. But the fact that they were able to tell it in the way that they did with all the comedic elements, I loved. And I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I feel like the overall story, everything lined up really well and progressed really well. There was a very interesting good and bad kind of contrast throughout all of the characters.
Yeah.
Which was kind of interesting, like the scene where Taika Waititi is giving JoJo his little pep talk after being humiliated in front of his whole cohort.
Yeah.
And how he like talks him up as like how good the rabbit is and stuff. Like I found myself like uncomfortable like finding him playing Hitler as like almost an endearing character in that scene.
Yeah.
And not completely ridiculous and evil.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just there's a lot of switching back and forth. This makes you like question so many things in terms of intention, good and bad intention on people's sides and stuff.
Yeah.
Like Scarlett's character, she is like fun,
Yeah.
and really fun and quirky
And
but-
lighthearted.
and but completely willing to put her life on the line
Right.
for what she believes is right.
Yeah.
Not even in terms of just harboring
Mm-hmm.
Elsa's character,
Yeah.
but spreading the revolutionary kind of propaganda and all that.
Yeah.
You know, putting the little flyers out,
Mm-hmm.
Free Germany.
Yeah.
I believe that's what they were.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was a really well crafted. All the characters are placed really well.
Yeah.
It's not like I was like, oh, everyone seems to be in the movie the exact right amount.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and JoJo's the star. Roman Griffin Davis.
Yeah.
He's awesome in the movie. Extremely funny, but just the way everything is wrapped up story-wise, it's really well done.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I don't think the film, I mean, obviously we have an idea of the good versus the evil, obviously because of history and because of we know how those events turned out. But like one of the characters, for instance, Sam Rockwell's character, Captain Klenzendorf, I didn't even realize his name until I printed out the sheet.
They said it
Klenzendorf.
in the movie, but it didn't land for me.
Yeah, me either. There's a moment at the end where his character isn't just this evil, like mustache twirling guy. He actually does a decent thing and saves JoJo's life essentially
Yeah.
at the end of the film.
He saves 2 lives.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And it's little details like that and character intricacies, I guess you could say, that Taika did a really good job of avoiding just the stereotypical one-dimensional like evil Nazi
Yeah.
group of people.
Yeah, there's even like a gay element to his character too.
Yeah.
You know, and it hits so many levels
Right.
with every character. It's kind of insane, actually. The more we talk about it, the more I think about it. Like Sam Rockwell's character is freaking hilarious through the entire movie. He doesn't ever really come across as super evil, even though
he wants to be,
yeah,
but he's not.
he's not. You know, he's more concerned with his outfit, and he's constantly shit-faced throughout the movie, and then at the end he really shows his heart.
Yeah.
You know, and that again it gets back to that. You know, there was tons of good people
Yeah.
in Germany
Mm-hmm.
when all that shit was going on,
Right.
and like the difficulty of standing up for what you may believe in
Yeah.
in a situation like that. It's a little scary.
That's what I appreciated the most is he really got at just how messy human beings are. Like there's no one box to put anyone in. Like the way our emotions work and our interpretations of events and the way we act are just so complicated. And I felt like that came across through a lot of the characters in the movie. And just to go back real quick to Taika Waititi playing Adolf.
Yeah.
Apparently that was one of the studio's requirements for them to greenlight his film.
Okay.
They were like, we'll greenlight your film, we'll give you the money you need, but one condition we have is that you play the imaginary Adolf Hitler. And he was kind of just like, what? He's all, well, first off, my skin is a lot browner than someone you'd probably want in this role. And he really kind of just had the audience rolling at that point. But I couldn't imagine anyone else in this role other than Taika Waititi.
Yeah, it's really hard to think of somebody that could have pulled that off.
Yeah.
Maybe Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only person I can think.
Yeah. But I mean, oh God, he was just so good in the film. And then he had a great little story about he would obviously have to shoot his scenes, but on top of that, he was directing at the same time. So he'd go around like barking out directions dressed up as Adolf Hitler. And so he was like, I had to make sure, you know, to be extra nice when I was giving my directions because I was dressed up like Hitler. So he'd be like, you know, I want you to turn this way a little bit, but it's more of a request than it is a demand. So,
That's funny.
so
Yeah, it's a really ballsy movie to make. you're expecting a lot of people to get it,
Yeah.
and it's a really delicate line to dance all over and all on all sides.
Like, I've tried so hard to describe the movie, to kind of give people a synopsis of what it's about, and it's really difficult because we're not kidding here when we're saying that you could say JoJo Rabbit is a screwball comedy. You could say that it's an ultra dramatic World War II film. You could say that it's almost like a family film too. It has a family element to it. You could say all those things and be absolutely correct in describing JoJo Rabbit, which is why it's so unique. And I haven't seen a film quite like this in a while at all. Not that I can remember.
I can't really put it in any box.
Yeah.
It almost has like a Wes Anderson.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that too.
Feel to it,
Yeah.
a little bit, but with the goofy, almost Flight of the Conchords
Yeah.
style comedy those New Zealanders.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you come out on the resolution of the whole film,
Like,
in terms of the characters and how things wrap up, how they tie the bow on at the very end?
yeah. You're talking about with JoJo and Elsa?
With JoJo and Elsa, with Scarlett's character,
Yeah.
with how the final scene is in direct reference to a line from Scarlett earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, where do you come out on how everything is tied up? Because it's quite the happy ending
It is.
in some ways.
And I am kind of glad they ended it on that note, because prior to that, there's a very, very heavy scene. And I felt like I'm actually really glad they included that scene in there, because I feel like that drove home the stakes of what was going on
Yeah.
in that time. So there's a scene involving Rosie, JoJo's mom. And like we said, she's been secretly harboring a Jewish character. She's spreading out flyers that are, free Germany, stuff like that. And she's very against the Nazi ideology. She understands and realizes what's going on, and she realizes the dangers, and she's willing to sacrifice her life to do that. And that's ultimately what happens. They end up catching on, and in the square of the town, they have public hangings and just leave people dangling from nooses for the whole town to see.
Traitors,
Essentially. And JoJo is on his way home one day, and he sees his mom hanging from there. And
but the way they reveal it
right.
is like insanely, probably one of the most shocking death reveals
Yeah.
in a movie
You
ever,
see,
because it's like a playful, fun scene.
exactly. And you see nothing and everything all at once, and it's very brutal. It's essentially, you get a shot of like her knees down, and you recognize her by her shoes. And it didn't hit me at how well thought out and planned the shots were in the film until you're able to you realize that you're able to recognize Rosie just on her shoes.
Yeah.
Like, he dropped little details like that really paid off during moments like that. And it was gut-wrenching when you see her shoes and she's dangling there. And I remember sitting in the theater at that moment, and you could audibly hear people like sobbing
Oh, yeah.
in the theater. It was so heartbreaking. And it really gets at, while the film is, it's a screwball comedy in a lot of senses, it's very much a drama that has a lot to say about what was going on then and what is relevant now. And that's definitely one of those scenes, I think, that hit that out of the park and really affected me when I watched it.
Yeah, the fact that he's like chasing a butterfly,
Yeah.
and it's like this, happy little moment, and he's running around, and then he stands up, and when he stands up, it's like her feet come into frame.
Yeah.
It's like insanely heavy,
Yeah, totally.
really heavy. And the fact that she dances,
Yeah.
throughout the movie with her shoes, and then she has that line in the movie, I think it's to Elsa, right, where she says, what can you do, or something along the lines of dancing means you're free,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like how they wrap it up.
Yeah.
Really good.
The writing is just so sharp
Yeah.
in the film, like really well done. But speaking a little bit of Scarlett Johansson, what did you think of her performance in that role?
It was really, really good. you know, in a movie where they're playing a different nationality of people, everyone's kind of doing the German accents and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to not care about certain things on that almost like hyper-realism aspect
Yeah.
when it's a comedy. So none of that bugged me at all. But I really liked how shallow her character is. Not shallow as in character, but like how shallow she is when she's around the Nazi dudes and how short she is with them, and kind of how short she is with her son too, because she realizes he's a full-blown fanatic.
Yeah.
And then her full-blown super duper depth in character, the scenes where her and Elsa are speaking to each other in the little hideaway between the wall spot. I thought she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really, really good. And the scene where she, you know, wipes the soot all over her face and you know, speaks to her son as the father.
Yeah.
Really, really good. And the dancing, you know.
Yeah. She got her Best Supporting Actress nomination for this movie.
Congratulations.
And while she didn't win it, it was a total deserving nomination. And I knew right away watching that scene where she's acting out JoJo's dad with the soot on her face. I knew, like, at that moment, I was like, okay, this is the point where she won her nomination. I thought she did a great job of, like, her character's motivations and her ideology are complete 180 opposite compared to JoJo's at this point. But at the same time, what I liked was that's still her son, and she still absolutely adores and loves her son and wants all the best things for him. And she still had that very nurturing, like, motherly interaction with JoJo. And she's like being gentle about kind of like hinting at sort of the wrongs and how he's thinking and how he feels about the Nazi party and the events going on. And she did a really good job of maintaining that balance between someone that just has a completely different, like, moral perspective than her son that she's raised.
Yeah.
And then that on top of all of her interactions with Elsa, and you get a lot of that reinforced through those interactions as well.
Yeah, you can, like, she did a really good job of portraying pain on her face.
Yeah.
In a non-speaking kind of way, like the parts where they're walking around the city and she's talking about what used to be there, and the city's always like empty and they're on full-blown food rations, and she did a really good job of facially portraying the stress that a mom in a situation like that, with the stakes and what they're doing, what she's, you know, taking on, and then having a son that's like growing up in this insanely propagandized world and being groomed to be a complete monster. Yeah, really good job.
What were your thoughts on Thomas and Mackenzie's performance as Elsa?
She did a great job of showing that she understood the stakes of the situation. And yeah, she's a really awesome actress. It was completely believable and kind of fun. But very mature. You know, like a kid in that situation. Demonstrating that part of maturity and knowing kind of the stakes of everything too.
It's almost like you could have taken someone of that age from today that is aware of the history of the Nazis and put her in that situation during the time. Like, she has that kind of knowledge of how ridiculous everything is being sold to kids like JoJo. And I felt like some of the best writing in the whole film was given to her character. Like, some of the lines she has, they're just so sharp and, like, witty, but very, very truthful.
And, like, the perfect kind of comebacks to combat, you know, racist ideologies.
Yeah, she was great. And she's also a New Zealand actress that Taika was familiar with, so he brought her onto this film.
Hell yeah, New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand's kicking ass right now.
I need to come see that beautiful country.
Yeah, I'd love to also. One of the characters I enjoyed so much was Sam Rockwell's Captain Klenzendorf. And like we hit a little bit earlier, what's so funny is that he's not a very evil guy in general. He believes himself to be very evil and wants to be this evil Nazi, but his character is very much kind of in that gray area in terms of like his moral code, and you see that at the end with how he handles JoJo. And who's the other character in that situation? I think you said that do you remember off the top of your head?
Finkel,
Yeah.
his like right-hand man,
Yeah.
played by Alfie Allen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's stuff like that. And then on top of the complications with the way his character is portrayed, I love just the screwball comedy aspect of how he is. Like, he's blind in one eye, right? Because of some kind of injury he sustained or something. And that's what's keeping him from fighting in the front lines. So he runs this Hitler youth camp, and he's so like, he's so gung-ho about teaching these kids like the Nazi way of doing things, how to throw a hand grenade, like,
But in a very funny way, to where like he doesn't want to be there. He's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is my job. And,
yeah, like very sarcastic.
and
Like,
there's this really funny aspect of all those characters that are like the leaders of the school. Rebel Wilson's character and Alfie Allen's character. They all like have like this one-uppy thing.
Yeah.
When they start talking like, oh, I heard Jews do this, and oh, I heard
Yeah.
them do that, and it just shows like, again, this like really deep metaphor for like they all know they're ridiculous,
yeah,
but they know if they don't toe the line, it could mean you're dead in a second.
sure, yeah.
You know, and it just like, yeah, it really brings up the way people are gonna act in like a life or death fascist state. Like if you're living that, it's easy when you live somewhere like we do to be like, if I was there, I would have,
Yeah.
you know,
No.
I would have killed every Nazi and we would have taken our town. You know, it's like,
No way.
And these characters all did it in a really funny way of like really characterizing the ideology.
Yeah.
And Rockwell is like he's like the pinnacle of that whole aspect of the movie. He's so funny and kind of evil, but totally good-hearted at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And like not really taking their job as seriously
Right.
as probably a lot of people were at that stage of the war.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he did a great job. I love Sam Rockwell, man. He can be in anything. And
I couldn't imagine
I
anyone
love
else in that character other than Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, I didn't know the cast very well going into the movie.
Yeah.
I know Taika Waititi from the movie What We Do in the Shadows, the one that was on HBO.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious, by the way.
I love that film.
With Jermaine. And then I knew Scarlett Johansson was in it, but that's it. I didn't like look at a cast or anything. I didn't know Sam Rockwell was in the movie, so when he first got on screen, I was just like, oh yeah, like I am super stoked.
I loved Rebel Wilson when she's introducing herself at the Hitler youth camp, and she's just like, she's talking to all like the girls in the audience and how they can like bear children for the Fuhrer. Like, so ridiculous the way she does it. But it's interesting because I feel like while all this stuff seems very over exaggerated and ridiculous, it's probably not very far fetched to what they were feeding people back then.
Yeah.
In that area.
Yeah, I don't read German or speak German, but I'm assuming if you read a lot of those posters, like a lot of the propaganda posters, that there's probably jokes in there too.
Yeah.
But they're probably accurately based off real propaganda posters of the time.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. And it seemed like they did a lot of research in terms of getting the atmosphere correct and some of the stuff you would probably see in the heart of Germany, like in a town like that. I'm very curious to know where they filmed the whole film really in that town. I don't know if that was like filmed abroad or filmed here, but I thought while it was very screwball comedy, it did have a lot of good things to say, and it was very dramatic at moments. I felt like the film visually was very authentic to that period and the things you would probably see in a Nazi town like that.
it was probably a bit crisper,
Yeah.
you know, in what we see. You know, it wasn't, you know, dark and dingy like some
Yeah.
kind of World War II movies can be. It was quite colorful.
Sure.
But the little aspects of the movie, like the, you know, the Nazi flags hanging all over the town,
Yeah.
and just that, those are the little elements of the movie that really like are scary.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like to see what can completely run away fanaticism ideology can get to,
Yeah.
and how everyone in the town is just kind of like rolling along with it when you have to, you know, you have basically the whole world. There's a line in the movie where Archie Yates' character, Yorkie, says something about like how many countries are coming.
Yeah.
It's like near the end of the movie, and he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and the Chinese and the and the Americans and the Canadians and the British and the Russians, and he's just like rattling off all these countries, and they're like, and then he's like, you know, Japan's still on our side, but they don't look very Aryan to me. Like, it was so funny, and such a good job of tackling that topic,
Oh,
you know,
man.
in that time period.
Yeah.
And just shout out to Archie Yates. He was my favorite character in the whole movie. He's so funny.
Anytime he came on screen and gave JoJo a hug, I was like, man, come on. You're
Yeah.
killing me, man. This is the
Yeah.
cutest thing ever.
And the scene where they're like laying in the tents.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Boy Scout camp, but it's a Nazi
Totally.
youth camp, and it's like it really plays with your moral compass. You know what I mean? It's like putting a magnet right up to your
I forget
compass.
what the specific line was in the tent, but he's like, do you think Jews are like, and he says something ridiculous, and then they're just kind of speculating on like,
Yeah, and they're like playing with their little knives,
yeah,
you know, and it's just insanely well done.
it's bonkers. I think maybe other than Schindler's List, I think this film tackles the idea of Nazi ideology and anti-Semitism in a way that is very, very important. And I think anyone today that would want to get an idea or a sense of just how serious blindly following ideologies are in, you know, any time period has to watch this film. Like, it has a lot to say, a lot of important things to say about the dangers of that.
Well, and it shows how much more effective comedy and satire can be to combat these things rather than straight violence.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the way satire can attack a topic and go so over the top and show the level of ridiculousness.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a much more powerful tool.
Yeah.
You know, laughter and ridicule are almost a much more powerful tool than like full blown going to war.
Yeah.
But in that situation was sometimes you need to go to full war. But comedy has a much, you know, broader reach in today's world, and we shouldn't get complacent about having to fight those types of ideologies and bad ideas,
Absolutely.
nationalist ideas,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Taika Waititi, he's become one of the best storytellers today.
I don't know if I've seen much of what he's done
Yeah, he's done
besides this, which is kind of, I'm guessing, like his kick the door in. I'm a badass.
yeah, this
you know,
this
I'm
was
a
like his
top
coming out.
director in the world.
I think this is probably one of the more serious films he's directed. Like, crazy enough to say, it's very comedic, but he directed a Thor film.
Okay,
And
I haven't seen it.
And like,
how many of those are there?
There's 3, I think.
Okay,
And I wasn't a fan of the first 2. I never cared about that character. I'm totally into those films, and the moment I watched his Thor film, Thor became one of my favorite characters. Like, the way he handles characters is so well done, and I love how he infuses little bits of comedy into every situation, but it never takes away from the message he's trying to tell. And I think that's what his biggest strength is. And you even see that in films like Hunt for the Wilder People. Have you heard of that film?
no.
That's another like New Zealand based indie film that's really well done.
Sweet, I want to see it.
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows. That's like,
Yeah. I've seen the movie. There's like a show too, right?
yeah.
That he produces or something?
Yeah.
Or is he in it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's in it for like an episode, I think. But
Yeah.
he's
But
still
the
involved.
movie I saw was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. But what I love is like he's not just this screwball comedy guy. Like he's not just making the 40-year-old virgin or like screwball comedies like that. He actually has something to say of substance
Yeah.
in all of his films.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him, I think, so good, especially today. Like I don't think he's becoming like my favorite director working in Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
He's so good at it.
I don't know if I know enough to call out a favorite, but I would say in terms of using comedy to tackle really adult, real human subject matter like this, the only other creators I think that have even come close to what Taika Waititi executes here in JoJo Rabbit is South Park.
Yeah.
To be honest, like South Park is the only other show that can tackle issues like this.
Yeah.
And hit them right out of the park.
Yeah.
Every time South Park does an episode that's a really heavy subject matter, they're spot on. And this movie's spot on too.
Yeah.
Did you like the cinematography and how everything was shot in the movie?
Yeah. So I think one of the coolest things about the film and one of the most well done things was how the way things were framed, especially like a lot of the action sequences, a lot of the characters, the people, they were framed in kind of a big, grand, majestic way. I don't know if you picked up on that. So there's a lot of these big shots, and that really heightens the idea of looking at things through the lens of a 10-year-old, like
Okay.
a 10 or 12-year-old. That was, I think, very intentional, something that they did. And the scene that we already kind of hit on with Rosie as she's hanging there in that really heavy scene, like things like that make you realize just how well thought out the cinematography and camera work was done, like to really set up and pay off in certain points of the film. And the other thing I feel like that you touched on because you mentioned it, there is kind of this Wes Anderson feel in this film. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way it's edited. So there are a lot of these like quick, quirky little cuts in between certain sequences. And Wes Anderson is known to do that like in all of his films. It has this kind of quirky pace to it. And I think that might have been something that you were picking up on when you made the Wes Anderson connection.
Okay.
Because that's something I totally got too.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool shots like in the bedroom with JoJo and Hitler.
Yeah.
And then it's like there's like quick cuts and kind of like this craziness, and then he ends up with them getting like so excited and screaming and stuff. And then I really like the use of like panning side to side and then up and down, like the pan up when he stands up.
Yeah.
is really well done. And then in some of the war scenes at the end when the Allied powers are converging on the city.
Yeah.
Like there's like these rotation type things, almost like there's like slow-mo explosions going off and the camera's almost spinning. I really liked a lot of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the action caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting there to be quite the explosive budget
Yeah. I'm
for
glad
that kind of stuff at the end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the slow-mo stuff at the end because that reminds me, like, that was one of the things that hit me kind of weird when it was going on. And I think it's meant to be that way.
You're like, oh yeah, it's a war movie.
It's a war movie, but at the same time, it's like the way everything's shot and how slow everything's moving, it's very surreal. And I think that's almost like him saying that at that point, JoJo's world has been completely turned upside down. Like he's totally flipped from being this really energetic Hitler youth to being this kid that's starting to understand what's going on, and his whole world of like Nazi ideology and Hitler youth is being completely like invaded almost by forces, you know, beyond his control, and it's all just kind of converging in this one point of the story. And I thought that's how it hit me with all the slow-mo. Everything kind of seems like very surreal.
Yeah, it's very symmetrical with kind of him getting his nickname, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really deep kind of wrap up at the end of the movie
Mm-hmm.
with he can't kill the rabbit in the beginning of the movie.
Right.
Which speaks to he might believe all this crazy Nazi ideology, but at heart he's a good person.
Yeah.
Doesn't even want to kill a rabbit. And at the end of the movie, when all the shit's hitting the fan, he picks up a gun,
Yeah.
to go fight for his country, but he can't do it still. And he just runs and hides like a rabbit, runs and hides under a building.
Yeah.
And that like gets back to the scene where Hitler's telling him what the rabbit does and how it will outlive and run and hide and be faster. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of symmetry there.
Yeah.
With
And then
the ending and then all the explosions and everything. He's almost got like shell shock. It's almost like when Saving Private Ryan when they storm Normandy and
mm-hmm.
Tom Hanks has like the slow-mo kind of blackout thingy where you can't see.
Yeah.
It's not that in terms of like how it's shot in focus and gore and all that, but
Mm-hmm.
it has that kind of feel like
it has
the reality of war all smashing you and catching you right
absolutely.
at once.
It has its heavy elements too, because aren't there moments where even though it's like off camera or on the side of the camera, like the Russian forces are like legit executing German soldiers, like right there on the street.
Yeah.
And Joe just kind of just walking by, and it's like he's taking all this in, and it's just all these things being compounded one on top of the other. And yeah, I had a really weird sense watching all that because it's very hard hitting.
Really hard hitting.
And I love that they don't shy away from all that too, because it's a really like serious aspect to the broader message they're trying to spread.
Yeah.
And I love how he didn't shy away from any of that.
I was pleasantly surprised. I knew the story was going to be great,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of the cinematography and the look
Yeah.
and all the special effects with all the explosions and
Yeah.
stuff and how devastated the city is
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And I feel like they did pay attention to period too, in terms of like when all the Allied soldiers entered the city, all that felt really legit
Mm-hmm.
and real.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the metaphor for the paper uniform
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
Yorkie's wearing
When they're rationing.
just demonstrating like the dire straits that the Germans were in at that point, like completely out of resources. And he's rocking a paper suit. He's like, it's the newest technology. That's really funny.
Oh man.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
Like that strikes me as someone like reading something like, oh yeah, right at the end they were issuing paper suits to dudes because they were out of wool or whatever.
Yeah. But it does a great job of emphasizing like the dire straits they're in at that moment.
Yeah.
Like even if that wasn't historically accurate.
It's really funny. Super funny.
Like it does a great job of that. One element of the film that I have to give complete credit to for really bringing home the emotional aspects and tones of the film is Michael Giacchino's score
Okay.
for JoJo Rabbit. He's become a pretty well-known name in the world of composers in Hollywood. He's done all kinds of films. He won an Academy Award for the film Up. I don't know if you've heard the Pixar film Up.
No.
It's a very touching, moving story that he did,
Okay.
that he scored. And Taika was saying that when he was discussing the film with Michael Giacchino, he was like, I just want it to sound like Up. Like, make it sound like Up. That's the tone we're going for. And then Giacchino would give him a little sample of score, and he'd be like, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't quite sound like Up. We need to sound more like Up. So yeah, he's done superhero films, he's done animated films. He's really showing how versatile he is. And the score that was playing during the scene where JoJo discovers Rosie hanging, it's so devastating, and it's so moving and absolutely devastating at the same time. And a lot of that's a credit to his score.
Yeah, the music has a really good way of enhancing all aspects of the film. So like the fun, the goofy,
Mm-hmm.
and then the super heavy, emotional. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's total home run.
And then aside from the orchestral score, I loved how he incorporated elements of like popular music. And like kicking off the film with all the propaganda, like historical images of like the Hitler, gatherings and stuff with like the German version of the Beatles. Like,
yeah,
She Loves You?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting flip right there.
Yeah,
know,
like
how
could
they-
you imagine him like trying to get the rights to put that song in and like going up to Paul McCartney and telling him what the story's about?
Right? That's almost like you just have to watch it.
Yeah.
And it speaks to that narrative, like these they were presented as the rock stars
Yeah.
to all of their people.
Mm-hmm.
It shows the power of propaganda and hype.
Yeah. So before we go into our love hates, I just want to, just for my curiosity, was there a particular scene that you enjoyed the most out of the whole film, or that struck you harder than anything else?
The scene at the end, Taika's performance at the end,
Okay.
when he shows up after blowing his brains out and he's trying to,
Yeah.
get one last glimpse of someone worshiping him.
Uh-huh.
That scene hit me really hard
Yeah.
for some reason. And then obviously the death reveal
Yeah.
was really heavy, emotional. It's probably like the most emotional I've ever been in a movie when a character gets killed off,
Oh, wow.
because it's so sudden,
Yeah.
And
And the way it's done is so striking.
they
too.
kind of trick you into, because it's almost like, it's not like Sam Rockwell's character ordered her
Mhm.
dead. It's more like she got caught for the propaganda, and that's why she's dead.
Yeah. He's like secretly trying to cover up for them.
Yeah, because he clues in
Yeah.
that, the scene where she's reading her papers and she gives the wrong birthday,
Right.
and he plays along.
Yeah.
So I felt like, okay, he didn't turn in
Mm-hmm.
the mom, and if he had turned in the mom, the kids would have got killed too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, she got caught for the propaganda, and that's why she's dead.
Yeah.
And that was a really emotional scene. But yeah, the scene where Hitler's lost it,
Yeah.
and then he jumps out of the window.
Yeah.
That's
Fuck off,
that
Adolf.
was my favorite. Yeah,
Or fuck off Hitler.
yeah, yeah.
And he kicks him through the window.
Yeah, dude. It's he doesn't jump out the
Yeah.
window. He jumps out of a window
He does-
earlier in the
he
movie.
does.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he kicks him out, and it's got like a superhero comic book explosion to the kick. That's my favorite scene.
I was cracking up when
movie.
he's like, "Come on, little man, can you just give me a heil?
Yeah.
Give me a little heil for old time's sake."
Yeah, and I guess the dancing too, because that's like a really nice way to wrap up
Yeah.
the movie. And it's funny dancing, the kid, and it starts like awkward
Yeah.
and almost
I
has
know.
like a Napoleon Dynamite vibe.
I think he's playing David Bowie, right?
the way it starts they start dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole kind of wrap up I really enjoyed.
Yeah, for me, one of the most beautiful scenes that I loved was right after he finds his mom and she's been killed, and he goes home, and obviously he's completely upset, and he pulls a knife on Elsa, and he stabs her a little bit in the stomach
No, shoulder.
or shoulder. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's bleeding. But then after that, they have this beautiful moment, like at the windowsill, and they're just having a heart to heart. And then at one point, they put their heads on each other, like lean on each other, and you see the backdrop of like the bombardment that's going on in the city. I thought it was so beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it's hard to find fault with any of your favorite scenes.
Yeah,
Any scene in this movie, really.
it's really well done. What would you say to people that maybe are on the fence about seeing a movie like this or are curious?
Go see it. The more people, this is just me. Just watch it.
Yeah.
And that goes out to all kinds of people.
Yeah,
Like if this movie, if like say some Nazi assholes see this movie and it makes them realize their ridiculousness, that's an awesome thing. So
Yeah.
I want everybody to see this movie.
yeah,
Just for the good of humankind. It would benefit humankind for a lot of people to see this movie, especially right now.
Okay, if I may, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but if you had to give a 15-second synopsis of what the movie's about, describing it to someone to get them to see it, what would you say?
It is a completely hilarious take on the darkest elements of humanity with the right moral message. Is that 15 seconds?
That's
I don't know.
I don't care. I love that. I think that's hit the nail on the head right there. For me, I mean, I couldn't recommend this film more than I already do. I absolutely love it. It is my favorite film of the last year.
More than 1917?
More than 1917. For me, it hit so many of the right buttons. It fired on all cylinders. I loved all the comedy. It's really, really and a film about Nazis. What I could say is not so much about Nazis, but about Nazism, about propaganda, about fanaticism, and the good people that can still exist and fight against that within that whole framework. You can say that JoJo Rabbit, a film that has Nazis front and center, is a film all about love.
Yeah.
And that's what I really love about the story. So at the end of the day, the message is all about love. It's about acceptance. It's about doing the right thing amidst all of the garbage that you're being fed. That's what I really appreciated about the film. And I'd recommend it to anyone. So if I can this time, I'll give my rating first. I give this a 5 buckets out of 5. 5 buckets of popcorn.
I expected that.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of my favorite films, and it blew me away.
I didn't hate anything in the movie. You know, I loved every aspect of it. It is like the most masterful satirical performance I've ever seen in terms of tackling a really heavy issue and making it extremely consumable on a million different levels.
Yeah.
From the comedy, from the heavy, to the visuals, to the just ridiculous caricatures.
Yeah.
And I've been racking my brain looking for fault in this movie, but I can't, and I'm giving it 5 bong loads.
Oh man.
You know, I wanted to be a little more reserved, but I can't. This movie's too good.
Yeah.
It's I can't bring myself to say anything made up bad about it because it's just too serious of a topic and too timely.
Sweet.
It says so much more than just a movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's just the message is so on point. The acting's great. It's insanely funny.
Yeah.
It's an awesome movie. Parasite better be good. I tell you what. Because 1917 got a 5 and this movie gets a 5. It better be good.
Oh man.
I'm sure it is, but
Yeah.
how this didn't win. Do comedies kind of get shunned
Yeah.
in Best Pictures?
Yeah. Comedies have to transcend the genre to be considered for that category, Best Picture.
No, I mean,
Just in general?
I can't think of a movie transcending a genre more than this.
Yeah, this was the best aspects of what comedy can do and what a film can do. Like the kind of message a film can give as an art form. Like if I was a teacher teaching like a high school class or something, I would absolutely play this film.
What was the rating of it? Is it PG-13?
I want to say it was PG-13, but to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it was rated PG.
PG?
Yeah, I'm going to pull this up right now as we're talking about this, but
I don't know. It seems like the violence and the mortality aspect of the movie is maybe a little too heavy.
PG-13.
Okay.
So it's rated PG-13.
Yeah, I'd show it if I was a teacher.
Yeah.
In history class.
Like for me, something like this is more accessible and I think says just as much about the topic as like a Schindler's List or something like that.
Yeah. And it does it in a much more digestible way.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you as uncomfortable as watching a movie like that does.
Right.
And make you that bummed out.
Yeah, totally.
You know, because when you're attacking a topic that is this much of a bummer.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
That to be able to laugh throughout it and laugh at it is really powerful.
Yeah. Well, those were our thoughts on Taika Waititi's JoJo Rabbit. You heard it from us. Please go out and watch this film. It's totally worth your time and it's so well done. We think you'll absolutely love it at the end. Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time and I'm sure we'll be diving into that Parasite film pretty soon too.
Yeah, that'll be coming. I watched JoJo Rabbit on my TV. I paid for it. I'm happy I paid for it.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. Check it out, people.
Yeah, go see it, guys. But that's all from us. I'm Drew. with El Toddo, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Later.